Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Strategy Show, Week 18, the final tournament strategy sim show of the regular season. And then we'll get into the postseason. We're not going anywhere. My guess is you're just going to have massive postseason contests anyway. Curious, I assume what what DraftKings and them are going to do. Who knows what FanDuel is going to do? But I assume DraftKings is going to have just Saturday and Sunday, hopefully, for the main slate in the wild card round. And then the standalone Monday game is a showdown. Greg, that to me would make the most sense. I can't imagine they include Monday.
I think they're going to run a bunch of different contests, though. So not Monday, but I think there's going to be this. If I remember correctly, this is what they did last year. Big Saturday contest, big Sunday contest, and big Saturday through Sunday contest.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Pretty much the same way they would do. It's like an expanded version of Thanksgiving or Christmas Day where they have a huge main slate, but then they also have big showdown contests for all of them as well. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I think we're going to have some pretty fantastic contests. So we're not going anywhere. Happy to have you guys with us. If you don't mind, take a single second this morning, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Let me do that right now. I'm already subscribed. Subscribe to the channel. It is free to do so. Both of them. You'll never have to pay a cent. And if you hate it and you decide you made the worst decision of your life, just click unsubscribe and we'll gladly refund your misery. Also, hit us with some comments down below if you're watching or listening after the fact. Crazy slate. I said to you on Wednesday, though, and I think we kind of agreed on this. There are angles here, right? Like you're going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to put in the work on a slate like this if you're trying to get different. But I think there's going to be a lot of ways to try and shoot gaps that other people aren't looking at. And when you've got 13 games on a main slate with a lot of teams completely out of contention, a lot of teams resting starters, and a lot of teams actually needing this game to clinch the playoffs or for seeding purposes, there's a million different directions you can take.
Yeah, the thing that's really tricky about it is, so there are certain players, and some of them were ones that you and I highlighted on Wednesday that we know for sure we're going to want to get exposure to. Certain guys who are in games that are super meaningful for their team. The flip side, though, is that there are going to end up being players who are very important to the slate who are not going to be in meaningful games at all. Either they're backups that are playing for their team. That's where it gets, I think the easy part is saying like, hey, Bo Nix is a reasonable QB play. Like those are the easy parts of the slate. The hard part is trying to figure out the other guys who are going to be the value plays that kind of break the slate.
What I want to know, though, is how chalky do some of these meaningful players become on a slate like this? Like how chalky is a Mike Evans against the Saints going to be? Not only do they need to win this game, not only are they 14-point home favorites, not only is the offense firing on all cylinders, but also he's got the incentive, right? To tie Jerry Rice, get to 1,000 yards. He needs 85 to get it done. So across the board, I do wonder how many of these guys that on paper, right, like in a vacuum, they look fantastic. How many of them are just going to, because we have right now Mike Evans at 21% ownership. We will update this tomorrow. We will update it Sunday. Keep in mind, doing these like mass overhaul on projections and ownership throughout the week for week 18, it's a fool's errand. Like you're literally just wasting your time. So we'll massage some things today. We'll have more updated when we go into Sunday, and you have Saturday games as well. But I would be shocked, Greg, if Mike Evans, even at his price point, is only around 20% owned.
Yeah, it's a really big slate because we got, so many games on Sunday. So you would think in theory that should spread out the ownership a little bit, but I agree with you. I think the field is just going to gravitate towards the spots that we feel comfortable because that's what I want to do too. It's the same thing we did on Wednesday when we were hand building lineups at 100%. Our first look. We were just like, hey, I feel good about Mike Evans. The game matters. He's obviously a really good fantasy asset. We have a lot of value. We've got guys that we could spend up for, and there's only a few of them we feel good about the workload for. So just kind of naturally are going to plug in the guys like Mike Evans, like Bijan Robinson. So I totally agree with you. I think these guys are going to be really popular in a way that's going to be hard to even capture with data.
Yes, the last part you just said is the important part. In a way that's hard to even capture with data. But I do think there's going to be some ways to get different, though. I don't really have any concerns about that. By the way, Stephen Leibowitz said Mike Evans receiving yards prop is getting high. Yeah, I spent the other morning answering questions and comments on my picks for every game video that I do over on the OddsShopper channel. And people are going, the Mike Evans incentives, You got to, all of the incentives this week. And I'm trying my best, Greg, and some people just brick wall, trying my best to explain, like, yes, there are incentives. And yes, there might be some that you can exploit. However, like Cortland Sutton was at 64.5 receiving yards over on Hard Rock and on Bet365. He needs 83 or something to get a $250,000 incentive or $500,000 incentive. Sure, there's that. And then I tweeted the other day that Mike Evans was at 88.5 on Prize Picks. They're first to market, which means like Prize Picks and Underdog, which oftentimes they're just off. But if you don't think the books notice this stuff, you're crazy. Mike Evans is at 100 on Caesars, juice to the over. It's by far, it's like 17 yards higher than it's been all season. This isn't by mistake. Like, this is very obvious that they know what's happening. And another thing, Greg, I think they'll try and get him there. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at incentives for guys like Cortland Sutton or Mike Evans, I can assure you that the coaches are not coming into the locker room prior to the game and Denver needs this game, right? Must win game. Tampa needs this game. Must win game. Win and you're in. They're not coming into the locker room going, all right, boys, rally around. Listen, now, first order of business. We get Mike Evans his 1,000 and we get Cortland Sutton his $500,000. Then we worry about winning a football game. What do you say? Of course not, right? Like, you got to win the football game first. You got to put yourself in a commanding position, and then you can work all the other shit out. All I'm saying is with incentives, I'm not saying they're not important, and I like them more for DFS than I do for betting, but you have to put them in context.
For sure. The spots where it's going to be more relevant is it's not going to be the Mike Evans, the Cortland Sutton. It's going to be if like a Saquon Barkley was playing, which I know he's not. So it's not the most apt comparison. But if Barkley was playing, we would have known exactly why he's playing. It would be to get to a very specific rushing yard number. And we've even seen players talk about it in the past. So yeah, totally on the same page there. There's going to be spots where, hey, this veteran's playing in a meaningless game, but he needs 6 catches for a $300,000 bonus or whatever. They're going to do what they can in that scenario to get him those 6 catches. And we even saw it with a couple years ago with Gronk and Tom Brady, where there was Brady was mic'd up and his entire sideline in a game that was meaningless for the Bucs, his entire sideline talking to Gronk and the team was like, hey, we have to get Gronk these 8 or 9 receptions, whatever the number was.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it's just the way it goes. Yeah, it's looking at, there was another spot too, like Adrian Peterson. Do people realize this guy came like 10 yards shy or something of Dickerson back in 2012 and still didn't get it? Didn't get it. What's that?
I did not realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. He had last game of the year, but they needed to win that game against the Packers. He had 34 carries for 199. So, yeah, it's crazy. I think he finished the year with like 2,097 or something. I forget what the record is, but that was right off. That was fresh off an ACL tear. He was like 9 months or 8 months removed from an ACL tear, something just stupid in that one. But anyway,
8 yards shy, 2,105 to 2,097. Kind of also something else too is I've seen people online say they're happy Barkley isn't playing because it wouldn't have counted because he played one more game than Dickerson. Meanwhile, though, Dickerson broke O.J. Simpson's record, and Simpson it was in a 14-game season. So, like, in the long term, people don't even remember how many games there were in a season because people have completely forgotten that O.J. played in a 14-game season when he had that record.
Yeah. Also, I think if you look at it, Barkley has, I think, like 30 or some fewer carries than Dickerson did that year too.
So did Peterson. Peterson, the year he had 60, which also it's just like, it's so many caveats to me. It's just how many did you have? I don't care about all the asterisks and whatnot or any of that. Because with Peterson too, he had 31 less carries than Eric Dickerson and finished with 8 fewer yards.
Right. That's why all of these are kind of silly when you think about it. I don't know, man. Yeah, 379 carries for Dickerson. How many does Barkley have this year?
Let's see. Saquon Barkley,
I got it.
345.
345. So he's what? 34 shy?
Yeah, so he's like pretty much in line with what Peterson had. And then there's also Barry Sanders had a year with 335 carries for over 2,000 yards.
Yeah. Crazy. Steven said they should differentiate the records by season length. Yeah, they kind of should, but here's the other thing. Barkley just got 2,000 yards in 16 games in a 17-game season. So you can't just differentiate season length there. He did it in 16 games, right? You muddy the waters with that shit. In the end, the way I see it is who really cares? All right. You know, in the end, who cares? I think Barkley would much rather win a Super Bowl. Let's get into it. Make this happen. Just, again, disclaimer, Greg, there's a lot of things that'll change from now to Sunday, but I don't even have a problem with us using certain players as placeholders if we have to, just with the Sims to understand what these builds look like, because in the end, that's kind of all that matters, right?
Yeah, and one other thing that's funny about Wednesday is you and I were talking about how Mecole Hardman was showing up a bunch in the Sims, and then that you and I are like, oh, but he's on the injured reserve. We don't actually want to put him in lineups. And then he returns to practice this week, and now it looks like Hardman might end up playing this weekend. So that's something else too. Is I was going to message the data team and say, hey, we should take Hardman out, and then Hardman returned to practice. I was like, I guess we just leave him in for now.
Shout out to Tom Kennedy for being on top of that one, huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're just playing with the information we have right now. And there's just going to be certain guys that play that don't play, that it's going to be hard for us to know exactly as of right now.
This is easy for me, though, with guys like Samuel or Mecole Hardman. Just use them as placeholders, right? Like that. We don't need to get crazy here. I want to just see what the type of builds look like. So let's pull it up, Jacob, see what we've got here. Again, guys, let's pay more attention to the builds, less attention to the player. Not all of the players, obviously, but like seeing Kenny Gainwell's in there and stuff. If Will Shipley's back, you know, I would not be convinced that Kenny, again, if Kenny Gainwell's chalk, this is probably a spot that I get away from. We can make our own decisions there as well. And with that in mind, yeah, like I could see that being a spot that I don't want as much to do with. Michael Carter is going to be super popular. James Conner is on the IR now. Trey Benson, I think they put him on the IR too. Yeah, Trey Benson's on the IR. DeMercado's on the IR. So DJ Dallas is there. And Tony Jones Jr., I don't know if he comes off the practice squad. It's also possible, Greg, that Michael Carter just plays like every snap or almost every snap in this game.
Yeah, I assume also a lot of these spots, I'm going to, especially for some of these backup situations, I'm assuming that they're up. I'm most apt to rely on the prop market and just kind of see what do they expect to happen. So if there was going to be a Michael Carter prop up and say it's like 30 something yards, I go, probably a split backfield. But to your point before, if we do see a prop line of like 75.5 or 65 or whatever for Michael Carter, they go, oh, he's most likely going to be playing the bulk of the snaps.
Yeah. And I think he will, only because DJ Dallas was active last game and Carter still played 72% of snaps. So I think there's something to that. Anyway, let's take a look. Let me bring up the full screen here and see what we're getting. You mentioned earlier on Wednesday that we weren't getting a lot of QB +3. Now it changes a little bit, but are you surprised though? Because I tell you right now, I'm not, that the QB3 spots we are getting to are going to be like Kyler Murray, where no, they're not playing in a meaningful game. However, you know that those guys are all going to be out there, and Michael Carter is dirt cheap. So when I see something like that, not surprised one bit. If you were to go out there and see like QB +3 with some of these like super cheap backup players, I'd feel a little bit differently about that. But look at this. Michael Penix is up there. This is a guy that you kind of liked earlier in the week with Drake London, Bijan in one of them. The other is Drake London and Darnell Mooney. Bo Nix, no surprise. That's just a skinny stack. Bryce Young, cube, that's a two-man stack with Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette. Aiden O'Connell Anthony Richardson, although personally, I don't think Richardson plays this week. I think it's going to be Joe Flacco. But yeah, it looks, at least of the top 10 lineups or so that we have on the screen, that it's a lot of these more discounted stacks.
Yeah. And another part of this as well is I don't even think that we're going to, or at least for me, I don't think I'm going to be getting to very many of the triple stacks. I know a couple of them show up on screen here, but I don't think it's going to be that many overall. Maybe it is. I didn't run everything to look at it all that closely this morning, but this is a slate that's going to have a lot of value. It already has a good amount of value now, and there's only going to be more that opens up by Sunday. So it's not going to be necessary to create this much correlation to find upside in lineups, because there's going to be close to min price running backs that project well. There's going to be close to min price, or actually min price wide receivers that project really well. And there's going to be a substantial amount of points per dollar value in that way, to where you're not going to have to make triple stacks to create that ceiling.
And we've had some updates since you and I last talked on Wednesday. I don't know if all of them are reflected in the projections yet. Again, not a huge deal, but Mac Jones is going to start, which the line and everything else suggested he wasn't. It hasn't moved though. So I think the idea here is probably that Joe Milton comes in at some point. Because otherwise, I don't know why the Patriots wouldn't just be favored, honestly. Right? Like, they're 2.5-point dogs. Why wouldn't the Patriots just be favored in a spot like this, where you know that McDermott is going to sit his starters? You know that Josh Allen is only going to play. My guess is he comes out for like a snap or maybe a drive or something like that. So, with all of that in mind, I don't think Mac Jones is playable. Josh Dobbs is likely to start. That's an interesting one. He has minimum salary against Arizona. If you get all of the starters in for San Francisco, I think Dobbs is actually okay. And then another spot, Bailey Zappi is expected to start for Cleveland. But once again, playing him, don't do it. Kevin Stefanski said that Dorian Thompson-Robinson will likely get some opportunities as well. What did I say? Mac Jones? You know what I meant. I got the wrong team. Drake May. Drake May for New England. Thank you for the correction in chat. But yes, you knew where I was going with that. Either way. Oh, and Mason Rudolph and Will Levis are both expected, according to Callahan, to get snaps. So point being, Greg, there's a few teams, in my opinion, that you can just wipe out of the slate.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of spots where, especially some of these teams who they're going to be playing starters, but maybe for only a half or something like that, because those are going to be scenarios. Those are games that I'll just be writing off entirely. But yeah, there are a lot, like Buffalo, not a team that I'm going to be interested in. And yeah, there'll be a handful of spots like that, and more clarity on it in the next couple of days.
Are you going to be interested in Philly?
The running back situation, assuming that Kenneth Gainwell is, I know all week he's projected really well for us. I think we're going to need more clarity on if it's going to be him or Shipley in the backfield. But if Gainwell gets the start, it's going to be hard to not be interested in him at 5,600.
Very much so. But I wouldn't be surprised if Shipley ends up getting, because he was in concussion protocol, if he ends up getting a healthy dose of carries too. That's what scares me about some of these spots where you go, all right, wow, you got backup running backs for Buffalo going up against, a bad New England Patriots defense. Hey, maybe that's a spot that we should be looking to get to. And I guess you could make the argument that Ray Davis would be the guy, but we need to see if they're elevating guys from the practice squad as well, right? Like we need to see if there are certain players that are going to that are going to come up. Like, okay, do they bring up, I would assume, a Frank Gore Jr. is on the practice squad. Do they bring up Frank Gore Jr. for this game and say, well, Ray Davis actually plays a decent role in our offense? Or does Ray Davis just get the bulk of work, like him and Ty Johnson go out? I don't know. You see what I'm saying now, right?
Yeah.
Like there's definite instances where if you're not paying close attention to the practice squad and who they decide to bring up, I think like a Frank Gore could be one of them, and people just ignore it because he hasn't been on the team all year.
Yep, that could certainly be the case. My expectation right now is that Ray Davis is going to be the guy who gets most of the work out of the backfield. The reason I feel that way about the Bills is, well, number one, we could just write off James Cook being the guy. That's the easy one. It's not going to be James Cook. But then if you look at some of the recent usage for the Bills, it's been Ty Johnson's actually played as the secondary running back in close games. But then when the games have gotten out of hand, like last week, the Bills beat the Jets 40-14. Then it's Ray Davis who's getting more of the garbage time run. And this is more akin to garbage time run. So it's just an educated guess, but that's what leads me to think Ray Davis starts at running back for the Bills.
Oh, I think he starts. I just am not convinced. Do you remember there was a game earlier in the year where
Cook was out on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, where Cook was out and they elevated Frank Gore. He ended up not playing. But I remember I took a shot on Ray Davis and ended up getting lucky there because there were practice reports that Ray Davis was getting the warm-up reps with the starters. And you remember that at warm-ups?
It was Frank Gore was playing with the starters.
That's what I meant. I took a shot on Ray Davis, and because everybody was starting to pivot off of Davis to Frank Gore Jr. because he was getting work with the starters at warmups, and he never ended up seeing the field. So yeah. This could what I'm saying is I would at the very least, I expect them to elevate him from the practice squad.
Yeah, agreed. So something funny is when the report came out that Ray Davis was working with the starters for that game, I bet Ray Davis, I think it was at like 20-1 to score a touchdown.
No, and then it got Frank Gore. See, now you're mixing it up. Frank Gore was with the starters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Frank Gore was with the starters.
Yeah, so you said Ray Davis. Now we're all go ahead.
When it was first reported that Gore was with the starters,
right?
I bet Gore to score a touchdown because the line was 20-1 at the time or something along those lines. Then the line plummeted, but my bet got voided because he didn't play a snap.
Yeah, that was just a win-win situation there. Not knowing so going into it, but it was nice that it got voided. Yeah, he never played.
Yeah, he didn't play.
Again, these are just the things that are important to me, where it's like the obvious assumption for a lot of people might be going into this being like, all right, well, clearly it's Kenny Gainwell or it's got to be Ray Davis. I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. That's all I'm saying. I think there are a lot more question marks surrounding some of these guys. Like, oh, will it be Kareem Hunt since Pacheco's not going to play? I mean, it's probably going to be somebody like Carson Steele. It's probably going to be Carson Steele. Or I don't even know if Keontae Ingram is on the active roster, but that would be another guy. So those are the type of spots. Now, here's an interesting one for you, Greg. What about Blake Corum for the Rams?
Yeah, I mean, that's another guy who, if you guys remember in the offseason, it's so funny how things change. Also, just coaches lying for no reason. Sean McVay said that Kyren Williams is going to be the punt returner this year.
Yeah.
And which it would have been odd if Kyren Williams was returning punts for them this year. You consider what his role ended up being.
Did you see how many fantasy analysts got egg on their face from being like, all right, full fade now on Kyren Williams, full fade because he's returning kicks this year.
And then he just didn't end up returning kicks at all. But there was that point in time where if Kyren Williams was actually like a kick and punt returner for the Rams, he probably wouldn't have had as exhaustive of a role on offense as he did. He just didn't end up taking on that role, which also begs the question, why did Sean McVay say he was going to be doing that this year? It's the thing that always confuses me about coaches when they just say bullshit for no reason, like Mayo last week. So
yeah,
it didn't end up being the case, but there was all this Blake Corum hype heading into the season. And then also there was a point in time, was it 3 games ago or 4 games ago? Kyren Williams didn't get a single touch in the first quarter and Blake Corum had all of them. I was like, oh, is Corum just the guy now randomly? And then Corum didn't get another touch for the rest of the game. So there's been
Kyren still finished with 20 carries or something.
Yeah. And they gave him 0 in the first quarter. They all went to Corum, which was very, very bizarre. So there's been all kinds of weird circumstances for Blake Corum. This could definitely be the spot that they actually play him.
I think so too. But once again, Ronnie Rivers is still on the roster, So when you look at a backup running back, is it straight going to Blake Corum? I think Blake Corum could be a pretty solid play this week, though, if we're being honest. I could see Blake Corum being squarely in the conversation. But let's take a look at exposures and okay, so we're getting some Blake Corum there. I don't know how much information we're actually going to get from a lot of these coaches, though, Greg. Do you know what I mean? There's some spots where,
well, I think we're going to get information. It just may not be accurate information.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. What's most important is seeing, do they elevate guys? Do they do this? Do they do that? Running back value, though, is far more valuable than wide receiver value on a slate where you're benching your where you're sitting your starters. Because with a receiver, you still have to rely on a backup quarterback to get him the ball behind potentially second string offensive linemen. So that's where it gets kind of ugly. And we'll see where it takes us throughout the week. Eric Ronas said the mega mind genius play this week is to not try and be a mega mind genius. Yeah, yes and no. Let me get your thoughts on this, and then we'll start looking over some of these exposures. On one hand, I agree, but on the other hand, I'm not saying you're going to see a lot of duped lineups this week because there's still 13 games, but how concentrated is the chalk going to be once it comes Sunday? Like, that's what I'm wondering, Greg. And how do you combat that?
Yeah, so I do think it's actually going to be kind of easy to get around having too chalky of lineups, because I'm probably going to agree with the chalk guys like Bijan Robinson, Mike Evans. I know he's not projected for it to be now, but like Bo Nix, he's probably going to be fairly popular. Baker Mayfield's going to be very popular. Here's how you get around it. You just play more contrarian value options.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's much easier to play contrarian value options than it is to play contrarian pay-up options, because the contrarian pay-up options are probably just not going to play very much, if at all.
I could not agree with you more. Yeah, this is just one of these places where if you're eating the chalk, the value chalk is where you can get yourselves into some serious hot water, right? Like you see that in the regular season with all meaningful games. Now you go into week 18 and you're just assuming that this is going to be the guy. If there ends up being value that is super, super popular, with no real clarity surrounding their role, those could be the spots to pivot. Like you look at our exposures now, Kenny Gainwell, that's if he really ends up being super popular, that's a spot where I would be happy to try and find something else. Michael Carter, I like Michael Carter here just because everybody else is hurt. And we kind of saw a preview of his role last week when James Conner went down early in that game after 4 carries. So from a value standpoint, I get that. But then, let's just say as a placeholder, Greg, I'm not saying these are guys because we haven't updated projections in a day or two or since yesterday. Let's just say Mecole Hardman and Curtis Samuel were the chalky value. Again, placeholder. Don't worry about the name itself. Worry about the price point. Those are the type of spots where I go, all right, I think I can probably find somebody else that isn't getting ownership.
Yeah. Let me look at our top lineup. Can you sort by the pool ownership, Jacob? I just want to see overall who we have projected for the most ownership right now. All right. So
Gainwell's going to come down.
Yeah. Gainwell is going to come down. I assume we probably have Shipley projected out right now.
Yeah, probably.
All right. So yeah, if we have Shipley, if Shipley ends up playing, that would pretty dramatically change it. What if Shipley gets ruled out? Do you think Gainwell, maybe not almost 50% owned, but I think Gainwell will still end up being quite popular if Shipley's out.
I think they probably bring up Tyrion Davis-Prince.
Either way, Gainwell's ownership, it can only go down. There's only one direction for it to go from here. So we got Gainwell at 47%. We've got Bijan at that's not changing. Bijan's going to be super popular. Michael Carter, he's probably going to remain super popular. Brock Bowers, he'll stay super popular. Probably actually potentially even more chalky than what he is right now. Mike Evans, he's going to end up being chalkier. I don't really know exactly what to make of the Seattle guys at this point. That's where the next tier of ownership.
I I think real quick though, Tyrion Davis Price, not Prince. Last week against the Cowboys, he came in for mop-up duty. Keep that in mind. He's the guy that came in for mop-up duty in that game. If Will Shipley's out, I think Davis Price would actually be probably the guy that you could expect to get like the second half of the game for real.
Could definitely be the case. I do also agree with what you said before that they're probably not going to tell us information like that ahead of time.
No, what if they just all use preseason type rotations where this guy gets a quarter, this guy gets a half? Don't you think? All right, let's do, and then we'll talk about the Seattle spot because I think it's pretty interesting. And I agree. Samurai said Mike Evans feels like a rock regardless of chalk. Like you're going to need him in your lineup. I don't know if you'll need him, but he definitely is good chalk. There's no two ways around that. Him and Bijan are the two best pieces of chalk on the slate. I think Michael Carter's up there a bit as well. But Greg, what if all of these teams just end up not being viable because they all really do just run preseason type rotations out there where Gainwell gets the first quarter or the first half, Shipley gets the second quarter or the third, and Davis Price gets the fourth quarter or the third quarter. Like very possible that these type of teams are just going to run it like they would in the preseason.
Yeah, I think it is reasonable to look at some more of the preseason games and look at some of the usage to try to figure out because these are essentially preseason games. I mean, it's post preseason games, but yeah, they're more like preseason games than anything else we see over the course of the season.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of preseason style games, at least style teams. Seattle's interesting though because you got Mike McDonald out there in Seattle being like, look, if you're healthy enough to go, you're going. And he wants to get to 10 wins, which I think makes sense. You know, you're a rookie head coach, you're a first-time head coach. You want to get to 10 wins. Jacob, pull up Geno Smith's incentives for this game. Pull up Geno Smith's incentives. Wait till you see some of these. By the way, without looking, Greg, guess how many passing touchdowns Geno has this year?
I could tell you it would be like 10 more if it wasn't for red zone interceptions, but 23?
That's what I would have thought, like 25 or so. He has 17.
So it's red zone interceptions.
Yeah, if you included red zone interceptions, he has 40 touchdowns this year.
Did he miss any games with injuries?
No.
He was on the injury report. I guess he ended up playing through.
He came close. Sam Howell almost started. Yeah. Look, he could earn an additional $8 million. And now he won't because some of these are unattainable. But here you go. So 65% of his passes, he needs 185 passing yards. That's $4 million. $2 million, here's the big one. If the Seahawks win their 10th game.
Okay.
And Sean McVay is already planning on resting his starters. Didn't you and I go over this on Wednesday where he was basically just speaking in riddles?
Yeah. He was like the Riddler. Yeah,
but he insinuated that these guys are going to rest. He doesn't appear to care if they get the 3 or 4 seed. But yeah, how about those Geno Smiths, the incentives? The 10-game one to me is interesting. And if everyone's good to go and they want to get this win, they're already eliminated. I think guys like JSN and Geno look pretty decent this week.
All right. Yeah, with that information now being known, I agree with you. I think that before I'd said I didn't know what to make of a team like the Seahawks. Now I'm interested in the Seahawks. And I think Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, certainly Geno to Jackson Smith and Jigba. DK Metcalf might not be healthy. He's kind of like he's had odd performances ever since he missed that time earlier in the year. So maybe it's a lighter workload for DK Metcalf, but Geno Smith and JSN, I could get behind that.
Definitely. Yeah, right. He had the MCL sprain that held him out a few weeks. And then he had that nagging shoulder injury as well that he suffered against the Atlanta Falcons like a handful of weeks ago. So I don't know. But I think Charbonnet looks interesting here. I know he's priced up, but Kenneth Walker's done. You know, he's been done. Like, what if Charbonnet just ends up being a smash against backup players for the Rams? mean, to me, this is one of those guys that if he genuinely comes in with like 8-9% ownership, I think Charbonnet could look fantastic in this spot.
Could definitely be the case. And I'm trying to look in other games that Walker has missed. Has there even been anybody who's been mixed in that significantly at running back other than Charbonnet? Because off memory, it's been Charbonnet getting almost all of the playing time out of the backfield in those spots.
They did use Kenny McIntosh a decent amount against the Bears on Thursday. But you would still think that, I mean, Charbonnet still played 20 or 75% of the snaps and still had 18 touches. It's a good call on your part. Like, are they going to use anybody else? Yeah, I think McIntosh probably gets some work. But if they're going to play all the other starters, wouldn't they still give Charbonnet the majority of the workload? If JSN is expected to play the whole game and so is Geno Smith?
Yeah. And then I think even if we're conservative and just look at what happened on the Thursday night football game, I mean, you still got 18 touches for Charbonnet to 7 for McIntosh. Like, we're still looking at a 2.5 to 1 touch ratio.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Garoppolo, as Brandon Smith played, Jimmy Garoppolo is starting or expected to start for the Rams as well. That's interesting. Maybe it does end up, if he plays, being like a Jordan Whittington value spot.
I didn't even realize Garoppolo was on a team this year. I haven't thought about him the entire season until I think Wednesday when we were looking at who was going to start.
Well, he was suspended as well. Jimmy Garoppolo was suspended. Not that he would have played, but I remember that being a thing in the preseason. Like, oh, are they going to play him? And I don't think they ever ended up doing so. But yes, Seattle, good call out on that, because this team could actually end up being important. Now that you mentioned Seattle, let's do it like that. Go back to exposures, Jacob, just individual exposures. See if there's any teams that are popping. Like Arizona's popping. That's no surprise to me. I think they should be, right? 4.5 point favorites. Meaningless game, but they're going to play their guys. No James Conner. No issues with guys like Trey McBride, Michael Carter, even Marvin Harrison Jr. Tennessee grosses me out. There's Ray Davis, depending on what news we get there. What do you do with Houston? Because this is a spot where I could see D'Amico Ryans playing them in the first half and then resting all the starters. I'm probably full out fading Houston this week.
What did Houston do at the end of last year?
I don't know, but I think this situation is different than anything we've seen, because they're playing so poorly that if they limp into the playoffs like this, it's a recreation of the Eagles last year where they just got shit on in the opening round. Like, I don't think they can afford to just – maybe he will. But D'Amico Ryans said anybody who's healthy is going to play. The one caveat is that C.J. Stroud admitted to being banged up, so maybe they don't consider him healthy. But this team just got annihilated on Christmas Day on national television. They just a couple weeks ago lost to the Titans in Houston. This is a team that's really playing poor football right now.
Yeah, and by the way, last year doesn't even tell us anything anyway, because the Texans were actually – I forgot they were actually playing for something. They had to play the Colts for a playoff spot in Week 17 of last year.
They made the playoffs, right? And then lost to the Chiefs. No, not the Chiefs. Who'd they lose?
So last year – so
Ravens, right? No?
Yeah. So the final week of the season, they had to play for a playoff spot. They got in by beating the Colts. Then in the playoffs, they won in the wild card round against the Browns. Oh my God, the Browns were in the playoffs last year.
Oh, right, the Joe Flacco game. Yeah. And Houston actually had a really nice game.
Yeah, they won 45-14. Mm-hmm. And then they played Baltimore and just got their asses kicked. They lost to the Ravens 34-10.
That's right. Yes, I remember that. Because that wild card game, you're like, man, look at this team. But then again, you knew that the magic would run out eventually with Joe Flacco, and it did pretty quickly. So yeah, you can't use that as a proxy. But D'Amico Ryans says they're going to play. Here's the thing though, that doesn't mean they're going to play the whole game. Mm-hmm. If these guys come out, I know if you've listened to some of my shows this week, I'm repeating myself, but not everyone catches every show. if these guys come out and they look good through the first quarter or two, I'd be very doubtful that they play in the second half. Would also play to your angle on some live unders on props.
And it's funny, the team that I experimented with this with last week and won the in-game same game parlay on, it was the Houston Texans.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And they had already had that locked up too. They've already had that 4 seed locked up. So yeah, good call on that. Maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, I actually now that I'm putting everything together, they sat the starters at the end of the fourth quarter last game. I know the game wasn't remotely competitive, but that game didn't mean anything to the Texans in the same way this week's game doesn't mean anything. The starters playing about a half seems to make the most sense.
That's the way I see it too. I also think it depends on performance. Like if those guys have 2 touchdown drives in the first quarter, maybe it's only the first. That's probably the way I would play this, Greg. If they come out strong really early, you might actually be able to just start hammering unders like late in the first quarter.
Yeah, could be. And then they might just say, "Hey, we've got some good vibes going right now. We started the game off well. Let's ride this into the playoffs and not have something horrific happen like an injury or a shitty drive or something like that." I think that's probably how I would play it if I was D'Amico Ryans as well right here. I mean, I'd be most apt to just not play these guys if they actually are banged up like CJ Stroud. But if I was going to play them, I'd want them to go out on a high note into the playoffs.
Exactly. And you know what else throws kind of a wrench into the works here? They've already had a mini bye because they haven't played since last Wednesday. They haven't played since the 25th. So then you go 11 days for playing. If you don't play the starters then, how many days is that until they play? The 25th to, what would it probably be like the 12th? It's a lot of days.
Yeah, so it would be, yeah, you're right, the 12th. So yeah, I think around a half of football should be our expectation, a quarter to a half. I don't think they play the full game though, unless he comes out and says they play the full game.
Right, I'm with you. Rants. Will Baltimore rest anyone tomorrow or no? If Baltimore wins, they lock this. Look at the line if you think they're going to rest people. They're 20-point favorites.
I can't remember an NFL line that opened at 17 points and then just kept growing.
It's crazy. And you know, some of the reason it grew, I think, was because Bailey Zappi was announced the starter. But he's like, why would the line move based on DTR to Zappi?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same nonsense.
Yeah,
it's like who's going to be quarterback, me or my brother? It's the same garbage. Why does the line move for that?
Right. But I will say, Rance, that's another spot where I'm going to be glued to the game. If Baltimore goes up by like 24 in the first half, knowing that they've got a wild card game next week against either the Chargers or the Steelers, I think it's either the Chargers or the Steelers, then yeah, I could see that being a spot where, like, you know what I would start betting? I bet Keaton Mitchell overs, Greg. That would be a spot. Backup running back behind Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell overs, Henry under. If they let you same game parlay that live, like under on Henry, over on Keaton Mitchell. Again, you need the script to play the way that it has to, but you know, you've had a lot of success with this stuff in the past, and I think it's an angle that, if at the very least, you should be paying attention to.
Yeah, I agree. It might be hard to get backups props up, but the starters are going to have them in game. At least they have been in the past, and they have been for some of these other games that didn't have meaning so far this year. So if they have those live game props still up, that's absolutely what I want to do.
Can we look at wide receivers here too? Oh, actually, go to running back first. I want Greg's opinion on something that I was looking at earlier. Right now, some of the exposure that I expect to change, I think we end up getting more Bucky Sanders. I think we probably get a little more Zach Charbonnet. I don't know
Bucky Irving.
Bucky Sanders, did I say? That's
yeah,
weird.
You said Bucky Sanders.
That's odd. Oh, well, because Miles Sanders is right under him there, and I was trying to, you know.
Yeah. Dyslexic. I understand.
We have the old chestnut down there, the old tree nut down there at Tennessee. I don't know if Pollard's going to play. Tajay Spears is doubtful. But in the event that Pollard and Spears are both out, that actually would be a value spot. so worth paying attention to. We have Blake Corum up there. Again, guys, our whole purpose of doing this show right now is just to get you positioned to know what to look for going into Sunday. If you could scroll down, Jacob, is that it? Jonathan Taylor. I like Jonathan Taylor a little bit more than we're getting of him. I think they still are full go with him, and I expect Flacco to play. Any other spots you just want to call attention to before we talk wide receivers?
No, just I agree with you on Chestnut. I think that both Pollard and Spears end up sitting. Spears right now, it's like more or less confirmed that he's going to end up sitting, but I don't think there's a reason to play Tony Pollard at this point in the season either, especially considering that while he's been healthy this year, he's been banged up well, I shouldn't even say he's been healthy this year because he was out last week, but in general, he's been healthier this year than he's been in previous years. There's just no reason to play him in this game. So I do think Chestnut plays. I think he starts, and at 4K, he's worth having in lineups.
All right, let's take a look at wide receivers. Before we do, a couple of things I wanted to throw out there for you guys. I was thinking about this the other day. Greg and I kind of talked about it. We've had an insane influx of people jumping into Portfolio EV for one reason or another. You know, they see the success that Greg and I have been having, and a lot of us over here at OddsShopper using it, and all of the subs as well. Like the screenshots that we've been getting from subs on Portfolio EV are insane. And you know, when you think about it, it's different than DFS because you don't really need to know much. The learning curve isn't significant. There's a mass entry tool. I place all of my bets from my phone, all of them. So do you. I know you're a phone better as well. Do them straight from the mass.
Everybody is Ben Raza.
He doesn't know what a phone is.
Yeah. He is no clue. He still thinks it's one of those things you put it on the wall, you use it to call your parents. It's in case of emergencies.
But we just added the mass entry tool for Hard Rock and for ESPN Bet as well. If you're in Florida or any of those states that they're available, just continuing to iterate and make this better. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, we had a lot of people sign up for that, and you know, Ben and I say it every Tuesday, like. There's no better way to buoy your DFS losses week over week until you hit a tournament than to use Portfolio EV. I've had so many weeks on DraftKings where I'm like, damn it, losing DFS week. And then it ends up being like a full out break even day, which is amazing because it was just winning bets. But we have a link join down there. Damn, Peter has 120 bets this morning. Yeah, dude, it probably took you 20 minutes to do so, if that. If you see, join any sportsbook, get Stokastic Sims free. Even if you're not in Portfolio EV, but I mentioned it in the same sentence for a reason. If you wanted to get all NFL, $100 value core package, right? It's a $99 value, $100 value, all the way for week 18, because you got Saturday games tomorrow too, Sunday games, wild card round, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, divisional round, Saturday, Sunday, championship round, Super Bowl. Just click that and go into claim offer on anything you want, right? Like Jacob can scroll down for you. This is how you get a free month. Claim offer on Caesars, on BetMGM, whatever it may be. Click claim offer, instantly verify your identity. Takes like a minute to do so as they process it. Deposit $5 or $10, whatever the minimum is. Place a bet with that deposit, and the moment that bet settles, take a screenshot of your settled bet and take a screenshot of your welcome email. Just follow those 4 simple steps. Email it to us at support@stokastic.com and just tell us what you want. If you sign up for 4 different books or pick'em sites, if you're in a non-legal betting state, that means you could get a free month of core for NBA, for NFL, for MMA, for PGA, all with the Sims included, right? And you're getting all of the bonus bets and the sign-up offers that they have over there. My thinking, though, Greg, was like, if you just sign up for Portfolio EV and you need to get on more sports books, double dip here. Sign up on the books that you already need for Portfolio EV to be on as many books as possible, and get your free months of Stokastic and get all of your bonus bets. I mean, it's a perfect storm, my friend.
Yeah. And by the way, the link join offer, we do have different links for it, but it is available for both DFS as well as Portfolio EV.
Yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to jump into either. But I'm just thinking, I mean, what better way to make sure that you're covered across all sports books and at the same time get free months on top of months if you want for any of these, especially as we enter the postseason and get to some really good football. So links down there. Check it out. You ever have any questions, hit me up. hit Greg up. Our DMs are always open on X, and Discord comes with any package, so jump in there as well. All right, let's take a look at wide receivers. So the Ridley one's tough because they're going to play 2 quarterbacks. We have JSN, Thomas. Wait, is Mike, can you scroll up or is that the top? Okay, there he is. I was going to say, where's Mike Evans? All right, that makes sense. Brian Thomas, totally get that. Hardman is just a placeholder, him and Curtis Samuel for any value that pops up. Nico, that I think could change. Cortland Sutton's another one, Greg. They need to win this game, and Chiefs are running out a bunch of backups.
Yeah, so the one that just immediately stands out to me that I would want, and you mentioned his name, I would want more of Cortland Sutton than we currently have.
Me too.
And I also think he's going to be more popular than 16% owned. I want more of Cortland Sutton than that.
So do I. Another one that I think could be very interesting is Ricky Pearsall. Not because Josh Dobbs is starting, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a Deebo Samuel sit. He didn't practice yesterday. I could see a situation where, like Pearsall, like last week, where they just tried to use him more, where he just gets more opportunities against the Cardinals. So little spots like that stand out to me this week. What do you make of the Colts wide receivers? Pittman, Pierce, Josh Downs coming off a bad week, but yeah. I would assume a bounce back could be in order here.
Yeah, so Josh Downs is the one I have the most interest in right now. And could you scroll down a little bit, Jacob? I want to see what our ownership is on Pittman and what is where I'm gonna have to just check our projections page. I think we're going to see the field. Oh, there it is. All right. So we have Pittman projected for about half the ownership of Downs. Downs was mega popular last week and just totally shit the bed. Pittman was the one who had the big game. I think the field is going to be more apt to play Michael Pittman than Josh Downs if this is a spot where we find out the Colts are playing all the regular guys. So I personally like Josh Downs more, and I think the field is going to like Pittman more.
I could see that being the case. And then in super mega mind genius is just Alec Pierce. No one ever wants to play Alec Pierce in the same price range as those guys ever. Yeah. That should be a good one.
Alec Pierce, I don't think has ever got, unless I'm misremembering a slate, I don't remember him ever getting significant ownership.
Me neither. Even when he was having those like 3 straight games with a 60-yard touchdown or whatever it was. Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, Juju could be interesting. We got to see who's playing, though. We got to see who's playing for Kansas City, for Buffalo. That stuff's going to be really important for Philly, all of that stuff. Who do they elevate? Again, can't stress that enough. Go to tight end, too. It's probably McBride, Chig, and Bowers. Yeah. Not surprised by that. I like Chigakonku a lot this week.
Some Noah Fant as well. Noah Fant, he's also going to make sense considering what we talked about with the Seahawks before. In the same reasons that JSN and Geno make sense. If I had to make a double stack of Geno right now, it would be Fant and JSN.
I could see that, yeah. Unless they do something and they sit DK, but Lockett plays or something like that. Yeah. Payne Durham, if Cade Otton is out again, that's viable enough. He's still going to play a lot. But getting to McBride here, totally understandable. Getting to Bowers, Charger situation's interesting because they'll know the result of the Steelers game by the time they kick off on Sunday. If the Steelers win, the Chargers are locked into the 6th seed. There's no mobility there. Maybe Jim Harbaugh decides that he's not going to play some of those starters, and then the matchup looks a little bit easier for Brock Bowers and Aiden O'Connell. Defense doesn't matter here. But the last thing I wanted to look at, Jacob, was if you just go back to lineups for a second, my guess is we don't have much double tight end, right, Greg? I would imagine that would not be the case this week.
Yeah, so double tight end, it is just not going to be necessary for this slate. I mean, there are tight ends like Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, who are projecting reasonably well, but there's just going to be so much value on the slate where oftentimes the best guys that are priced around $4K are tight ends. It's just not going to be close to the case this weekend.
Yep. And then last thing, if you want to look at anything too, Greg, let me know. But go to exposures, Jacob, and go to running backs. Okay, so Dowdle I like. I forgot to mention him, but I like Dowdle in this spot. He's just getting a ton of work, even in blowouts. Let me see if we have any Tyrone Tracy.
I don't think so.
That's a guy I would like to get some of this week. Drew Lock is playing for his career, all right? Don't try and tell me that Tyrone Tracy isn't going to be doing the same thing, right? Like people look at Tyrone Tracy, if there's this idea that like, no, well, he's young. What's the big deal? He was the 166th overall pick in the fifth round, fifth round pick. This guy's playing to prove himself for sure. Mm-hmm. So is Drew Lock. Assuming they're all out there and Brian Dable starts these guys, I'm going to have interest in the Giants players. We need more clarity on the situation because I know their draft selection, their draft position is in limbo. But if they go out there, and for what it's worth, we don't have any clarity that Dable is going to be back. So if that's the case, then he's going to try and win this game, right? Like he's going to, why would he try and lose so this team could get it? He doesn't know if he's coming back.
There's another aspect of this too. If you're the Eagles, and obviously if they're playing their backups, those guys are playing for their careers. They're going to play as hard as they can. But if you're the Eagles, is it not beneficial for the Giants to win? You get to push back the Giants getting a chance at a reasonable quarterback. You just get two easier paths to victories in 2 year divisional rivalry games next year. The Giants win this game. What? They get like the 7th or 8th pick in the draft. They miss out on the top quarterbacks, and then the exact same situation they are now. If I'm the Eagles, I would want the Giants to win this game.
Of course. And I could see it happening because it's football, and Brian Dable doesn't know what's going to happen next year with him. Drew Lock doesn't know. A lot of these guys have no clue what's going to happen to them. So they go out there, they play football, assuming they're out there. Anything else you want to look at before we go?
Nah, there's so much that's going to end up changing as we get up to Sunday. There's going to be reports. There's going to be coaches lying to us for no reason. It'll be interesting to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, anyway, follow Greg at Ehrenberg DFS, me at Laffy_D. Shout out to Jacob for producing. We'll run this through the postseason too. I don't know how they're going to do the slates next week, Greg, but I'm very curious to see what type of builds we're getting on what is it going to be, a 6-gamer or something? If they,
how many games are on each day?
Well, 14 teams make it. There's 2 teams on bye. That's 12 teams. So then it would probably be what? 2 and 3, maybe 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and 1 on Monday then?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I was actually curious if they're going to do 2 Monday night games, which they're not.
My guess is 2, 3, 1. That would be my guess.
You're right. No times yet for those games. It's probably going to be, if I'm remembering what they did last year, it was like odd start times for Saturday. I think they did an afternoon and an evening game. And then on Sunday, it was the normal, like a 12:30, a 4:30, and a Sunday night football game. And then Monday will be, I assume, regular Monday night football time.
That's got to be the way it's done for sure. Unless they do like a 7:30 on Monday. I feel like they did that last year. Either way, that's the schedule. That is going to be fun. And we're going to rely on the Sims heavily for that. So make sure you don't remove this show from your calendar quite yet, because we'll be back next Wednesday on the Wednesday for single lineup Sims, Tuesday for first look, and then you'll be back this Sunday. Ben and myself, Josh, we got you, Eric, Matt, all the way up until lock. Same schedule, nothing changes all the way through the Super Bowl. Appreciate you guys hanging. If you decide to join us by, way of just signing up the normal way, it's Stokastic for core, for the Sims, for the single lineup Sim, for the data, or you want to use the link join, whatever it may be. Jump in Discord, say what's up. Let us know you're here. We'll welcome you to the community. And if you have questions, we got plenty of tutorials to help you figure out how to use these tools in short order with Saturday football coming up tomorrow. Oh, who's on the Saturday show?
It'll depend if EMAC and Bellman are available. If not, I'll just do it.
Okay. Anyway, appreciate you guys. We'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.